listening to the Virtual CISO Podcast, providing the best insight on information security and security IT advice to business leaders everywhere.
Hey there, and welcome to yet another episode of the Virtual CISO Podcast. With you, as always, John Burr, your host, and with me today, Fausto Lendeborg. And hopefully I got the last name right, Fausto.
Got it right, John.
Always like to start easy. Tell us a little bit about who you are and what is it that you do every day.
John, first of all, thank you so much for the invitation, and let's have some fun. So I'm a co-founder and chief customer officer of Secberus. And the mission and the vision that we started at Secberus was to truly solve the security and operational problems that building cloud native applications brings to the enterprise. And my daily functions and duties it goes from speaking to product and technology team, and truly just translating what the customer needs, what the customer wants into product and technology, being the voice of the customer in our marketing materials, and truly expanding our brand. So I like to say that I do a little bit of everything, but my biggest task is to make sure that we continue to push forward our mission.
As a founder, you're the chief cook and bottle washer, and you clean the bathroom. Yeah,
And the coffee taker.
understand. I understand the startup world.
Yeah.
So I always ask, what's your drink of choice?
My drink, I'm a gin. I'm a gin guy.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
G&T, straight up martinis. Do you do I'm a Negronis. I'm a Negroni guy.
G&T, just because it doesn't give me a hangover, so that's the one I.
Yeah,
That's the
my
one.
wife is G&T, although she does it with lemon instead of lime.
Yes. Oh no, I'm gonna try that.
Yeah. And it's funny because I was always like a vodka martini drinker, and then I started drinking all her G&Ts, and suddenly found myself doing gin martinis and Negronis. So uh,
I was a vodka guy until one night, and then never
yeah,
again.
yeah, I've had a few of those nights. All right, so you talked about the cloud, and I don't think we need to. The benefits of people moving workloads and applications to the cloud are very significant and obviously very well documented.
Yeah.
But it's not all rainbows and unicorns, right? I think everyone who's moved stuff to the cloud has had that experience of what I'm going to call sprawl. In terms
Yeah.
of what's up there, keeping track of that sprawl within a single cloud, sprawl to multiple clouds, and increasingly we see our clients struggling with the idea of ensuring the security and compliance, right, of each of those clouds. So I know that's a problem that you're working hard to address. Would it be fair to call what you guys are doing cloud security posture management?
Um. Yeah, in some sense. I mean, it's a component out of our platform. I think we like to look at it a little bit different. I mean, that's what the market position the solution has to be, the Cloud Security Posture Management, or CSPM. But I think there's bigger problems to solve, and there's challenges that the enterprises are now starting to understand they need to solve for.
Gotcha. So managing a cloud, like from my perspective, there's three highly interrelated disciplines, right? We've got, obviously security, we've got compliance, and then we've got governance, which sort of sits across those two. Can you define each a bit and talk about their importance?
Yeah, I think for us, we look at governance as the umbrella term, and domain, and right under that, security and compliance, and kind of an overlap Venn diagram. I think for us, governance is a top level down approach, is a business approach to solving the security and compliance problems, right? And we like to say governance is how the enterprise aligns their requirements, their risk, and their intent into security and compliance. It's all about really combining and flipping the problem upside down. Before, we used to rely on security to provide governance, and that for us was a bottom up approach. Put a tool in the engineering box, and eventually we're going to get governance out of it. But as we transition to the cloud, I think, and new applications are getting built, we like to think that the new wave of enterprise platforms and applications are all business driven with business language. So for us, we start in governance as a business language to security and compliance, and then security and compliance come in as an enabling of that governance. So it's all kind of working together at the same time.
Yeah, it's sort of the holy triumvirate, and I couldn't agree with you more. I'm a big fan of the concept of tone at the top, and that's really what governance is. And governance is indeed a business function because these applications exist for one reason: to serve the needs of the business, right, or to drive the business forward. And if business isn't governing, if we're not governing it from a business perspective, then we're not going to achieve the business objective. So couldn't agree with you more with your approach. So with applications moving to the cloud, right, we see a significant move in most instances towards DevOps, right, and DevOps oriented applications. And one of the things that I like about DevOps and infrastructure code is the benefit of as code, right?
Yeah.
So what I was really intrigued by, and one of the reasons that I wanted to chat with you, is your quote unquote as code approach to governance, security, and compliance. To me, that's super intriguing. How does it work?
So if we first think about the as code world that's getting used in by DevOps in this new DevOps world, right? Everything is building to everything is transitioning to an as code stack, right? So everything from applications, infrastructure, software, is just a way of building applications because it's very fast, right? It's velocity, and velocity is what got us here in the security problem in the cloud. So when you think about if the problem relies in an as code world, think about this large snippet of code living everywhere. How can we fight the as code world if not with an as code solution, right? So we started thinking about how can we build governance, security, compliance continuously to mitigate the risk that an as code world brings. We needed to think about governance as code. We needed to think about compliance as code, security as code, and at the core policy as code, right? So for us, we decoupled the solution that's codified in an as code world from host the hosted environment of the application and the engineering stack in the as code world. And those two together as a blend are able to assess security, compliance, and governance at this because of its as code at the speed of as code built. So the big thing we're trying to do here and how everything meets in the middle is that we need to have a solution that doesn't block the engineer from going fast and from building. And one of the things that blocks engineers of going fast in today's world is this methodology of security by design. Let's take a quick break and let's make sure it's secure before you build it. And this approach worked 20 years ago in the world of change management. But as we transition to a cloud DevOps world, the security by design methodology doesn't work. So for us is build a solution that is as code that can be assessed and read the as code risk and vulnerabilities, decouple those two, and apply continuously configuration management, policy as code logic to this build out at the velocity of the business, right? So taking a step back is we encourage customers to continue this DevOps centric world. We encourage customers to continue to build in multiple infrastructure. And because we know that tomorrow there will be another cloud, then it's about decoupling where the infrastructure is from the risk assessment, and putting those two together allows us to get to where we want to get.
Yeah, so is it really, it feels to me like not that we're not doing security by design, more so that you're changing the way that it's being done. You're more integrating security by design. Because if you think about it, if you've got policy as code, and I'm assuming that your policy as code is establishing the settings and establishing the guidelines, right, to make sure that things stay within our boxes. To me, that is security by design, right? Your policy, if you will, is the design. You validated that the design is secure. So to me, it's not that you're not being secure by design. It's you're a better form of security by design because you're integrating security by design into the workflow.
That's very well put put there, John. 100%. Yeah. The security by design is not relying on the engineers to secure by design, but relied on the governance business to design the environment and guardrails around them. Correct.
Yeah, which is an awesome approach. Now, you mentioned, and it sounds to me like the as code approach also has the benefit of I'm going to use the term providing a level of abstraction, right? So much the same way that ODBC provides a level of abstraction between the application and whatever backend relational database we want to use, right? And I can write code once and I can reuse that code across any database that I want in my application. It sounds to me like your policy as code and your security as code and your compliance as code might have the added benefit of it that I can write that once, and it doesn't matter if it's sitting in Azure, or if it doesn't matter if it's in AWS or sitting in Google Cloud, right? You're going to translate that properly in those worlds for me.
That is 100% correct. We have multiple levels of abstraction, right? So when the data comes in, when the as code data comes in to be assessed into the platform, that data sits and gets normalized in our environment. So we do have the ability of building a business security or compliance policy that traverses the data stack across multiple environments. So the same policy applied in an Azure environment and the same policy applied to an AWS environment, regardless of the underlying technology that the engineers are using.
Yeah, that would seem to solve another problem, that I think most teams are having, including us as a consulting organization, is, it's hard to have deep expertise in each cloud vendor's offerings. Especially when you look at something like AWS or Azure, every time you log in, right, there's three new products or services or whatever you want to call them. Yeah, and staying on top of it is literally a full-time job. So, anything that can actually help me have a single cloud security engineer that can service multiple clouds, right? Supports a hybrid cloud approach, to me is going to be a win for the customer that uses that.
Yeah, John, and I'll tell you why that's a problem now. And that wasn't a problem 10 years ago in cloud itself. I think when we first started building our applications in the cloud, we were doing a shift and lift a lift and shift into this environment. It's like same server that used to run in your data center now runs in your AWS. And the engineers and companies they started looking at cloud lock-in as a big risk. We cannot use all the services that one cloud brings because we're going to be locked in. But then we quickly realized as this were coming completely stable across the board, the big three. Now engineers are feeling more comfortable and the business starts to feel more comfortable to enable cloud lock-in by using cloud services, pretty much platform as a service, services from the cloud that comes with battery to build cloud native applications in the form of serverless. So when you bring an engineer into a team, DevOps, they are going to build an application based on the knowledge they have within the cloud they've been using. So now you start seeing you bring multiple engineers and they all want to build applications in different environments just because they're comfortable. You're going into a cloud lock-in, but you're going into a multi-cloud lock-in based on the engineer. So the way we build applications in the cloud today are completely different than the way we used to build cloud applications in the cloud 10 years ago. So because we're now at that crossroad is now the ability of having a platform that can be data agnostic across the board, regardless of what the problem is, because now every enterprise will be in a multi-cloud environment.
Yeah. So once we've got your stuff implemented, is it do you look at it as being preventative, detective, corrective, some combination of all, right? So I'm assuming, right, we plug this in as code, it's sitting in the pipeline, and in much the same way infrastructure as code ensures that we end up with a secure server, based on having a validated image. I'm assuming that you're on that build cycle, that you're enforcing the policies that we've put in place, and I know that my application is going to meet those policies at that point in time. So I'm assuming there's a what I'm going to call a preventative component. Is there a detective component as well? So what, like we just had an issue with one of our clients where somebody spun up another dev instance, not following normal processes. They made a mistake with an S3 bucket and S3 bucket permissioning, and left some client data out there that somebody found. So talk about that.
Yeah, I think it's a combination, John, and it's a combination that we do, and it's a combination that the customer needs. And I'll tell you why. There's a lot of impact on out of remediation that customers have been historically afraid of turning on, like fix something the moment you find it, and that's a complete automation. And there's the challenge of how can you turn something an out of remediation? How can you fix something without understanding the impact, and you're risking the problem of a false positive. If it's a false positive and you break something, now you have a business risk, right? But I think what we do and the way we build it is it's configurable to the customer's risk appetite and their strategy of remediation, right? So we have technology from detecting and notifying the correct person, and that's something I don't want to skip over, because when you inform the right person of the problem, you now are cutting the investigation time by 100x. Right now, in the typical security world, we used to send all the alerts to the security team. Well, the security team doesn't have any context on the application they're building. For us, was super important to understand who owns the application, who broke the application. Let's make sure that we can detect the problem and route this policy violation to the right individual. So we do have detection capability in that extent. We also have prevention capabilities on preventing something from even getting built into a production environment. This is the so-called shift left approach in security, shift left of the DevOps cycle. And then last but not least, we also have a multi-action workflow engine, right? That allows us to prevent. If not, then we can detect, but we can detect in multiple channels to multiple people, and then we can also create automation to fix automatically in the web of webhooks that we can build. So it's an array of tooling that we provide within the platform that allows the customers to say, this is my strategy, and now I'm going to configure and implement my strategy using the Secberus platform.
Gotcha. So if I was using Secberus, would I be it would sound to me like, much the same way I might implement a code checking tool into my automation, that I'd be implementing something on the automation side. It sounds like if you're doing detection, that you've got to be sitting, and I always screw the two of them up, whether it's CloudTrail or CloudWatch, but like you're sitting in the logging, right, and looking at what's going on in the logging. Are you also instrumenting the application as well? Like some of the IaaS tools do, or so I'm just trying to figure out like where you're shimming in to, and how someone's implementing you to provide all this functionality.
Yeah, I think the beginning is we connect to every all of the GitHub repos, right, and can verify when there's a commit of code to a Terraform config file that's about to get pushed, right? That's a preventive mechanism. On the detection mechanism in runtime or production environment, how people call it, it's about listening to those log events and reading the changes. Once we can read there's a change, we go and assess the change in the infrastructure. Let's say that today there was a database change. We then go and assess the entire configuration and all the assets around the database against the policy, which policies are in place, and then we execute the policy. So we built something called a policy execution engine. That when we detect there's a change in the configuration, we can then execute the policies that are enabled for that enterprise. On the application, we're not looking at traffic in the application, and that's something we do that kind of east to west traffic and so on. Right now, we're focused on some of the biggest risk for the enterprise, which is misconfigurations at scale, right? So think about companies that have outsourced and thousands of engineers working on applications at the same time.
Gotcha. And the Secberus uh, policy as code sits in that Terraform file. So is that where it's typically being inserted? Like if someone's thinking about how does this actually work in the real world?
Yeah, so it works. We have a full SaaS agentless application, and when we detect a change, we go ahead and pull the information from the API, from the cloud API, the infrastructure as a service API.
Okay. Okay. So your code exists in the SaaS application. It doesn't
Correct.
exist in the client's DevOps code.
That is correct. Yeah, everything is within our product. That's correct.
It's interesting to me because your tool sounds very um, complex. Well, at least I thought this was going to be a very complex conversation, but you made it sound very simple. And I'm like, I must have missed something. What did I miss?
I think that the biggest thing that we talk about, John, is false positives and alert fatigue across product security products. We coming from the world where there's too many alerts, and it's just engineers are just turning these tools off because who can spend so much time investigating these alerts? So one of the things that we fight a lot, not fight but combat, right? The pain that we combat the most is the operational challenge that these enterprises have in trying to eliminate alert fatigue and reduce false positive rates, right? Because if you can do that, you now have your medium time to remediate gets shorter, and it allows you to really mitigate and manage risk, right? Because risk is an adaptable cycle, right? There's always going to be risk introduced into the business, right? There's always a change. So the attack surface continues to get bigger, but we're not talking about all the products in the market are talking about just detecting risk or remediating risk. But no one talks about managing risk. When you turn on an enterprise solution, security solution that is in the marketplace, and you turn it on across 500 cloud environments, you will receive 50,000 alerts. How do you manage 50,000 alerts? You cannot auto remediate immediately. You can't fix everything because everything will break. And you cannot send it to the SOC because they now have to investigate every single alert. By the third day, they're going to just not continue to do it. And by the third day, there will be another 10,000 alerts. So we are living in this like giant lake of alert fatigue. And we solve that by helping enterprises solve the operational challenge by routing the alert to the right person and tracking the entire process. And we believe that if you can solve the operational problem, you will then solve the security problem.
Yeah. And do you meet the people that you like? So as an example, like developers are typically sitting in Jira, where security folks might be sitting in Slack or some other channel. So, I mean, is that part of the process as well as getting to the right people through the right tools? Because if you can meet people where they live and work every day, and they don't have to go somewhere else to get this information, it just simplifies the hell out of things.
That's it. That's it. And everybody has different channels and different processes and different risk. And for us, it was how can we build a platform that can be tailored to the company's strategy? Because every company has a different strategy.
Right. And anything you can look, I mean, it doesn't really matter. And one of the problems we have is that as tools try to be both security and compliance tools for folks, what happens is security and compliance, are two sides of the same coin, but they feed different masters. Security is about the needle in the haystack, finding that needle, right? Isolating it, right? Signal to noise. Compliance is about the haystack. right? It's proving that all that other stuff happened. So this idea that you've got a mechanism by which you can improve that signal to noise for the security folks, right, to solve these problems, incident detection and response time can be reduced. Definitely makes a ton of sense.
100%, John. I agree 100%, 100% with you. Yep.
So going back to how it worked, because now I'm intrigued, right? Because I had a idea of how this worked. So that same, so realistically, even like I was thinking that inside of the initial build, you were in their code, right? In their automation. Really, whether it's an authorized change, an unauthorized change, a new build, someone making a change outside of normal build processes, because you're sitting on the logs, you're going to detect all of that the same way. And your compliance engine, every time it sees one of these checks, is going to actually run and say, hey, I have an issue here, or no, everything looks okay.
Correct, correct. So think about the CI/CD pipeline, which is the process of where an engineer pushes code from code to cloud, right? Kind of the entire pipeline. When you have thousands of engineers making thousands of changes a week, you now have that times a lot, right? So it's not just one pipeline; it's everybody has their own pipeline. So for us is to keep track of everybody's pipeline. When there's something goes wrong in any process of the pipeline, we stop them at their breaks and say, look, this is violating company policy XYZ, and this is how you remediate, right? So we go from that prevention mechanism. If it gets pushed and we detect another authorized or unauthorized problem in a runtime or cloud environment, then we also detect the same person that pushed the change.
Gotcha. But I mean, so remember I talked about before, someone going outside of the normal DevOps automation processes and spinning up a standalone instance to do some troubleshooting. I'm assuming you would have seen that,
We've
and
seen
you
that as
but I'm just assuming that by like the way that you implement this, if you see a change and that change is, let's say, so I'm assuming you've got somewhere in your policy, security, compliances code, whatever it might be, something that says S3 buckets should not be set to open. And if any S3 bucket from looking at the logs, any S3 bucket gets opened, without it being properly secured, you're going to flag that right away.
That's correct. That is correct. We see everything, and it's about creating different baselines for different set of environments. So we do have an environment that's production baseline, development baseline. So it's building the governance strategy for all the environments, and we do look at all the data.
Gotcha. And one last question, because I'm curious. Your policy as code or infrastructure as code, is that just like a XML variant, YAML, some type of standardized language that you're doing this in?
Yeah, we picked Rego language, Rego, Rego. And we picked that because there was a big project out of the Cloud Native Foundation called Open Policy Agent that built Rigo and had a huge community. Very easy language to write for an engineer. So with 4, 5, 6 lines of code, we can reiterate through the logic.
Gotcha. And I'm assuming that you've got a repository of pre-written Rego code for most of the major, like an S3 bucket not being left open, right? I'm sure is not something I've got to code. I'm sure that's something that I can just click on a button and that code is already done for me.
Yeah, we have over 600 policies out of the box that our customers can start with. And those policies can actually be cloned, edited, and completely customizable, right? They can map to compliance regulations. They can have their own risk environment, risk severity, completely configurable.
Gotcha. Right. So I'm assuming like on the security side, right, they're the types of settings that we talked about. On the compliance side, that might be where if I've got patient health information, I might have something which is validating that we're HIPAA compliant.
That is correct. That is
Okay,
correct.
cool. So it's almost like AWS Security Center where we can go in there like in our cloud-based app, Oscar. We have the PCI DSS stuff enabled. We've got the AWS Security Essentials enabled, CIS Bench, CSC enabled, and we kind of track and make sure that we're staying compliant with all that stuff. So same kind of an idea.
The same concept. Yeah, I think for us, a little more on the scale side, create any custom framework, any custom logic, any custom process and automation, and then doing that multi cloud.
Right. And I would imagine that's that dual facing value prop, right? I'm going to turn on a bunch of stuff automatically. Thank you for doing that for me. But everyone has a unique snowflake environment, right? Everyone's business and application contexts are different. So people are going to also want to customize this to their specific context to get the most value out of it.
Yeah, and for that, we actually build it within at the core of our technology. We have a feature, attribute-based access control, ABAC. I'm not sure if you're familiar. So with ABAC, which dynamically syncs in with any identity management, we can actually understand the attributes that the engineer has access to and provide a unified, tailored dashboard of the product. So if you have an engineer working on application one and an engineer working on application two, and they both have the same policy enabled, encrypt S3 bucket, when engineer one logs into their Secberus dashboard, they're going to see the policy violation of their own application. And when engineer two logs into the Secberus dashboard, he's going to see the policy violation of application number two, which means none of them are going to overlap in alerts, but the policy will remain enabled. And that's how we actually close the engineering gap from the top.
Gotcha. And then I'm assuming that you'd have an option if you wanted somebody in compliance or somebody in security to know about that as well. I'd have the option of having it visible on their dashboards as well.
That is correct. So we did a combination with policy as code, RBAC, and ABAC to actually get this done.
Gotcha. And then and then do people use your dashboards and reports directly in terms of being able to demonstrate compliance, or do you typically, are you providing some type of an API or some type of a feed to whatever mechanism, whatever GRC platform or SIM platform they're using to manage their
Yeah,
compliance?
it's both. It's both. We do have customers that can output a real-time report, snapshot of a current application compliance. Scheduled reporting is enabled in the product. But also we have customers that have added their own integrations into different stacks. So combination of flavors.
Um, what did we miss? Anything?
No, I think we've covered a lot. I think we've covered everything.
Yeah. Damn, you're good. That's all I have to say.
Not at all. Not at all.
Um, all right, yeah, hopefully, I know you've been dealing with a hurricane this week, so I'm prepared to give you a pass if you didn't do
Yes.
your homework. Did you do your homework? You know the
The
next question I'm going to
horrible,
ask.
horrible and amazing
There you go.
CISO.
All right, all right, you give me an amazing or horrible. What fictional character or real world person do you think would make an amazing or horrible CISO, and why?
I was thinking about this. And I had a name of a horrible CISO or a amazing CISO. Amazing CISO, yes. Sherlock Holmes was the person that I
Okay, and why?
thought. Just finding out the problem through investigation, the incident, and be able to map it, um, and create defenses around that, right? How to never replicate, how to avoid the replication of the incident. I think a very methodical person that can see everything very, very fast across multiple disciplines. I think that would make an amazing CISO, right? Understand the threat, understand the compliance, understand the technical engineer, kind of really a multi-domain expertise. Um, that's what I thought.
So I only have one question. Would he still be an amazing CISO if Watson was not his security manager?
Not at all. He needs watching.
Okay. Okay. So you didn't caveat it that way, so I had to make sure. All right. If if folks are interested in learning more about Secpress, what would be the best way for them to do that, Fausto?
Um, Directly on our website, secberus.com. Kind of we have a lot of contact information there. We have a lot of really good information about our product, our platform, our methodologies, our brand, our vision, our mission, our team. Like we put everything out there, all of our content. We try to really build it, with really trying to push this and solve this problem for the enterprise. So directly on our website, they can find all the information about our company.
Awesome, man. This has been fun. Thank you.
John, thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Same here, man.